Hey, what's going on, everybody? So this is actually the follow-up video about my kind of just thought points and views of FD Signifier and his philosophy and worldview and all that type of stuff. And in the last video, I'm not trying to. You have to really watch it through, like the entire thing that I said, to really understand like my personal philosophy that I'm laying down. Um, to kind of rehash what I was kind of saying in the previous video, however, is essentially I'm kind of saying is that black culture is subjective, is not objective. And for a person like FD Signifier who kind of puts disclaimers of, basically he doesn't have the answers, he doesn't know what to do, everything is subjective or whatnot, he still kind of retains a position of projecting a sense of objective truth about what it means to be black, which I would argue is doesn't really exist. Like it exists, of course it exists. There's people who look like him, sound like him, think like him, but at the same time, it's just a piece of the pie in the ever fluctuating concept of what it means to be black. And I think that sometimes outsiders to black issues or people who just aren't black sometimes have this propensity for trying to quantify blackness, and often they end up listening to people like FD Signifier as if he's like the arbiter of truth or something, right? And I would just refute that he's a part of the truth. A lot of what he has to say is valid, and I think what he's doing is good. But at the end of the day, too, being a black person, I can kind of tell that he has been influenced by his own environment, and and I think that he has a certain perception of what is black and what quantifies as it. So, and I find that very interesting. Myself being a leftist and him being a leftist is that leftists often try to remove or challenge hierarchies, but I think that there's this notion in the left that like the hierarchies, particularly when it comes to race, is like white supremacy and everybody else. But sometimes they don't see that there's hierarchies within even these particular units, these groups, right? And a person like FD Signifier might try to talk about how the hierarchy is the black bourgeoisie oppressing and gatekeeping, the black roots, Pan Africanist liberation, radical politics, or whatnot, right? What I would actually kind of argue too, actually, is that no, a lot of those people are actually maintaining a hierarchy of aesthetics by saying that you can't be black unless you particularly engage, act, view, look, date, whatever, a particular set of norms. In other words, setting standards to gatekeep what it means to be a black person. And sometimes you find that in these radical black spaces in which FD Signifier kind of wavers in between from, is on the periphery of, trying to kind of keep it real by not losing that crowd, but still trying to gain a larger audience by kind of articulating black issues to a larger global audience, essentially on YouTube. So what I was kind of trying to say in the last video, and like I said, I truly recommend you watch it because I'm just free flowing basically, is that I kind of approach black culture from an existentialist standpoint. Is that black culture is a construction at the end of the day, just like all culture is a construction. All culture, the root word of culture is a cult, you know. And for a person descended from slaves who has an emphasis for freedom, I don't want to be defined but really by anyone, black, white, what have you. But it seems that for black leftists who seem to be against like material, I guess, the bourgeoisie and capital or whatever, they're just actually just benefiting from their own value within this kind of world that we live in. It's just projecting it and gaining value from having a sense of elusive blackness that nobody else can really obtain, in which they get to gatekeep by setting the standards, even when it comes to canceling other black people who don't necessarily meet those standards. And aesthetically speaking, in other words, a person like Epi Signifier and a person who, let's just say, doesn't look like him, but he's still a black person, might actually have the same economic, political proclivities, right? But people just naturally would assume just how FD Signifier looks, that somehow he's more anchored with the culture or whatnot. And the person, let's just say, who doesn't, has a buzz cut or something like that, just wouldn't, or doesn't sound, or says the N word or whatever, somehow like their blackness is somehow undermined. And it's just very interesting that a lot of the audience of FD Signifier is probably not even black. And I think he's even admitted that. And there's nothing wrong with that or whatnot. Um, and I think that sometimes white liberals, white leftists, they're constantly searching for the blackest voice in the room in order to understand because they're desperate for understanding, in order to kind of get over their biases and understand history and the impacts of the privileges that they may not even understand that they had for a long time. So there's a nobleness in trying to understand what FD signifier is saying, and there's a nobleness in what FD signifier is trying to do. By the end of the day, is I would just say always take it with a grain of salt. Is that he's not the objective truth. He's never claimed to be the objective truth. But sometimes I notice sometimes when he's like bantering with other like black content creators or something like that, you'll notice sometimes some of the regressive things that he'll say, but I don't think he even understands that they're regressive, right? Like for example, let's just be real, the white woman thing, right? There's this whole notion within black politics and everything that unfortunately if you like a white woman or something, this obsession with black men and white women dating each other, that somehow you're not like black, basically. And which to the glee of white supremacists everywhere, they would probably agree with that. That black people just a lot of black people just seem to think that's totally acceptable to believe that, right? There's the whole notion of protecting black women and these things, right? Very important issues, right? Yes, black women from an intersectional standpoint do suffer a lot more than probably white women, of course, right? Higher infant mortality rates, higher, emphasis, the same type of police brutality and profiling, discrimination on the jobs when it comes to hiring because of, interviewers seeing their names, kind of stereotypical black names on resumes, things of that nature, right? So the thing I noticed too about like FD Signifier sometimes when he was like bantering with like I think Lil Bill, I think he's like another content creator or whatnot, is they'll make fun of like, black men, for example, who date outside of their race, right? Which is interesting, like I said, something that like a white supremacist or racial supremacist would probably agree with them on. But in a weird way, this whole notion that like black men take the blame for dating outside of their race is patriarchal because it robs black women of the agency in the reality that many of them date outside of their race or have had a little crush on little Kevin or whatever or yada yada. Oh, you the crazy little white boy or whatever, right? I'm just joking around. Like, oh, white boy got some moves or whatever, right? Like I've seen this or whatever, right? But black men take the brunt of the burden and the criticism and people like FD Signifier, who was raised by a single black woman, so I know he has a lot of those waiting to exhale. He'll even admit kind of hotep belief structures and systems and everything like that, which are very prominent in our community, or rather our society and everything. Is that he'll just kind of casually engage with this because he knows he has to engage with it. Because in order to garner what he would consider to be black authenticity, the black authentic audience, he has to kind of perpetuate these notions of protecting black queens and black men who date outside their race or betraying their race, basically. Race traitor mentality. Unfortunately, as crazy and as regressive as what that sounds. And these are people who are on the left, by the way. But we say that it's okay that black people do this, even if they're on the left, because black people have quote unquote been oppressed and everything like that. So black people have a right to kind of be self defensive about their culture or whatnot for fear of cultural appropriation, erasure, etc., yada yada. I know what I'm talking about here. You know, it's just interesting this whole notion of like, black women aren't attracted to other men of different colors or whatever. And so when black men are always when they try to do this whole card of like I'm protecting black queens, sometimes it's just black men playing game. In other words, because they know that they need black women's buy-in to have credibility on black issues. And so what's the best way to do that? You coddle their ego. You basically just kind of tell them what they want to hear. And I'm not saying that you don't believe that, you very well can love black queens and sisters and all that type of stuff and everything, right? But you still know you have to say these things in order to get credibility to maintain your quote unquote black status of authenticity within your own community. And as we're learning how white liberals and white leftists even perceive you, because like I said, they're searching for the blackest object in the room to understand what it means to be a black person in America so they can understand their own privileges and their own history. right? So it's like this weird thing, like this weird obsession. Like, you're a sociologist and you're like, what I'm saying, or whatever. And it's like what Umar Johnson, right, with his whole obsession about white women is that Umar Johnson is ultimately a patriarch. He doesn't care about feminism at all. He'll say the right stuff about black females and black sisters and black queens or whatever, but really Umar Johnson, like many black men in this Hotep Nation of Islam kind of black counterculture, Pan Africanist, quasi borderline conspiracy sometimes spaces is they want to be warlords. They want to have harems of women and everything like that. Even if it means spitting and playing good game onto black women, robbing them of their agency in the truth of the matter that many of them engage and have slept with, dated people outside of their race. But we don't see it bad when black women do it. We only see it bad when black men do. But if we see it bad when black men do it, we're really saying that men have more authority over the issue, have more responsibility over the issue. And I can't think of something more patriarchal than that. Like, in other words, it is on us to control our women. It's on us to own our women, right? Or whatnot, not thinking that black women choose. Put it this way, it's like the whole notion of everybody wants to freak out on social media when they see a black man with somebody of a different race. Is what if the truth of the matter is that women ultimately choose? Women ultimately choose. If black women were 100% obsessed with finding a black man, every single black man would probably have a black woman or something. You know what I'm saying? It's not just on men because women ultimately choose, right? And we want women to ultimately choose because their happiness is kind of prioritized in a relationship in our society a lot of the times. We don't like to admit that. A lot of feminists probably don't want to admit that. But keeping your woman happy is a big part in having a happy, stable household. So it's just kind of interesting. Like in this, but this is FD Signifier that people just kind of just hail as like this arbiter of truth when he can actually end up engaging in these kind of regressive, sometimes hotep like discussion points himself or whatever. Particularly when he gets around other black content creators and he has to keep it real, or maybe not even keep it real. Maybe just the real him just comes out. I don't know. It's just wild to me. Like this whole notion of being on the left and also being black and the standards that you have to do to maintain your black card when it comes to being a leftist, when really I just want healthcare. I think we all want healthcare. We all want cheap education. We all want a progressive tax system in which the lower and middle classes don't bear the brunt of carrying society, while you have mega technocrats and billionaires like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk doing whatever they want to and basically like overthrowing governments and like inspiring neo Nazis in Germany or whatever like Elon Musk is doing. You know what I'm saying? It's like sometimes aesthetics becomes just materialism at the same time, right? Like in other words, how do you really call yourself a true leftist if you're supposed to be a quote unquote against like you know capital essentially? In other words, all these the one thing about if you ever notice like extreme communism, don't you notice one thing? There's not a lot of culture. Is typically because they see culture as like a hierarchy. In other words, right? There's hierarchical differences and there's certain capital that can be gained or value that can be gained, right? That undermines the proletariat in its unity or whatnot. So it's like that's the thing about people on the left in like the United States and the YouTube. It's like they want their cake and they want to eat it too. They want to like live in this kind of isolated, segregated, even though it's not a top down racial structure caste system. It's really just a flattened, equal racial segregation. It's not segregation. We just call it on the left self determinism or whatever. And people just live in these kind of isolated spaces, and you can't really communicate truly across all the different units of the left because you don't want to offend someone. You're culturally appropriating something, and you start losing the actual economic impetus of what it means to be a leftist, which is, I hate to say it, class solidarity. And now we're back at the whole old adage of intersectionality versus class solidarity and class struggle and everything like that. And I'm not saying that you can't have both and that both can't be important and intrinsic to leftist movements or something like that. What I'm saying is sometimes we just get a little too lost in the sauce of the fetishization of aesthetics of our own individual groups and components, and that actually undermines the solidarity that we're actually striving for, which is economic reform of a capitalist imperialist system. So I don't know. Actually, I sound like I do know something. But anyways, right? This is a funny little clip I want to play for you for whatever reason because I know that like FD Signifier he's working on his like thesis or his PhD or something, right? And as I said in the last video before I play this, I'm actually from the Metro Atlanta area. I know everything about Atlanta. You know what I'm saying? Like I know Atlanta. I grew up. I went to church in near Greenbrier, old Greenbrier Mall, not far from Fort McPherson and everything like that. I know South the SWAT, Southwest Atlanta, you know all that type of stuff. I know. And so FD signifier sometimes he'll like talk about Atlanta or whatever, and it's just like sometimes people talk about it with like the sense of authority as if like you're not from here, so like you don't know what I'm talking about. But I'm just gonna nip that in the bud by saying I grew up there, so I already know what I'm talking about when it comes to Atlanta and Atlanta Journal Constitution, and I-85 and I-75 and 285 and Ralph Abernathy and the airport and you know Spaghetti Junction and Georgia 400. I know where I'm from, right? Even though I live in other places as well. Um, so not only am I from Atlanta, so I know where he's from. I'm also a little bit background about me. You know, I have a bachelor's in business. I have a master's degree in operations management. I am a military veteran. I come from a military family. I grew up in a two parent black household or whatnot. Family reunions with where all the black people are all wearing the same color T-shirts, all the funny little goofy stereotypes. So I don't know. I feel like I have and I consider myself a black man living in America, and I'm aware of that fact. I don't deny it, but at the same time, I don't necessarily fit into I think this kind of aesthetic that a lot of black people think that only black people can be, and a lot of what outsiders and white people think that black people need to be in order to be a quote unquote authentic black person, right? I feel like I piss a lot of people off on both sides, so maybe I'm doing something right. But anyways, there's a funny video from the movie How High, and I don't know why I'm playing this. It just when I think about FD Signifier, sometimes it just pops into my brain. So I'm just gonna play this for you, and it might get copyright strike, so I might have to snip it out. But it's from How High, and the title of the video is called "How High Racist Professor."
By the African Americans in the history of this country has been largely unnoticed. Of course, history is the record of an account of the past. But the issue here is who is recording the account? If it's Snowflake, Whitey, Paleface, Peckerwoods, Cracker, well, we got Cleopatra looking like Elizabeth Taylor. Jesus looks like a hippie in a dashiki. But if it's one of my proud black people that's doing the recording of the account,
yo, Silas.
well, we might have Moses looking like this fine black man right here. But black people don't get any credit. Tell me, who invented the air conditioner? A black man.
What's up, dogs? Yo, son, I'm sore as a bitch in here, man. And you know what else? I'm gonna have to knock that bar character the fuck out.
Once again, a black man.
Can't just wait till after class. You're supposed to be in here anyway. This is Black History. Black History? Man, it look like all the black students that was in here are history, nigga. Shh. You telling me to shh? See what I mean? Fuck history.
Oh, that's right. Fuck history.
Yeah, fuck history.
Mr. Moses, I expect you'll be ready for your quiz tomorrow.
Quiz my ass. The white man teaching black history anyway. That's some bullshit. I'm going to lunch. Take a nice long shit.
Oh, that's the kind of attitude I like to hear. And where are you going?
We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us.
Ooh, all right. Malcolm X. Well, I'm glad someone's appreciating the knowledge I'm trying to drop on you today.
Yo, Jamal,
What about you
wake
two? Why don't you walk out and protest with your brothers? Walk out on me. What are you doing sitting there? You look like Whitey. You look like a couple of goddamn Uncle Toms. Walk on out. That's right. Get up and move. You should lynch me. Lynch me. Lynch me for what my people have done to your people. Stand up for your rights. Move on out. Move on out.
So yeah, I don't know why. Just sometimes just thinking about like the left sometimes, and it just kind of sometimes it just reminds me of that whole situation or whatever. And it's like this, like how the white professor and his need to like believe that like Redman and Method Man are like these are the pinnacle of what it means to just be this. They are authentically black, right? And the other two black guys there, right? And of course,
Get matched today with the tax expert who's just right for your situation.
and of course, like the writers of the movie made the other two black people, right? They made them very like Ivy League and preppy and everything like that, right? Because according to America, only those two type of black people exist, right? You can't be anything in between. You have to be the Will or the Carlton, right? This whole obsession that white America, other America. It's not even just white people, right? It's just everybody has this kind of oversimplified view of what it means to be a black person, and it's just funny. They even wrote that in there and everything too, and how like the white professor is just like calling them like Uncle Toms and everything, right? Because it's just very interesting, and sometimes that just reminds me. I hate to say it, of the left. Sometimes, like in other words, a very interesting story that I remember I had, right? And like I was just like reading a book, right? I'm black, right? And I'm reading and I'm over here, reading a book about by an author, Don DeLillo, right? And like some like white kind of like you can kind of tell she's more on the social justice kind of spectrum or whatnot. And she kind of comes up and she's like, almost asking like, why am I reading that book or something? Like, shouldn't I be reading something like more black? And I'm thinking to myself, like, who do you think you are? Like what I'm saying, like, well, I can't understand the civilization that I live in, so it's okay for everybody else to like look into black culture and understand and study our stuff. But the moment that like I just admit that I live in a society that kind of landed on top of my people, and I'm trying to understand and read books, understand philosophy, it's almost like you don't want me to. So therefore, I become almost kind of suspicious sometimes of, I hate to be real, like the white liberal or the white leftist. But at the same time, I'm always going to be a leftist, and I'm never going to be a conservative. I'm never going to be on the right wing, and I'm never going to agree with psychos like Candace Owens and Officer Tatum and all those other people who are truly, I would consider to be problematic and destructive to the liberation and the improvement of black people or whatnot, because they're basically just hampering, not hampering, they're basically just rehashing white supremacist talking points through black voices for a white audience to continue the dismissiveness of black grievance and black issues. Um, and that's what I'm saying. That's why I kind of feel like a black existentialist and anarchist is that there's just the right and the left are both problematic in many ways towards blackness, regardless of how you view it. And just because you have black people like FD Signifier on the left doesn't mean that he doesn't have his own regressive thoughts and beliefs. But I think a lot of white liberals or non-black people necessarily see FD as like this harbinger or this arbiter of truth or something. And what I'm trying to say is just be careful in that, to not realize sometimes that you might be fetishizing this person, just because he might seem different. It's almost the equivalent of, oh, wow, I never knew a black person could think that way. You just got to be kind of careful in how you celebrate people sometimes. Um, but, anyways, I'm kind of just going off there, but I'm going to pause real quick and we'll finish this up in a little bit. Okay, so I'm about to play some of this video about FD Signifier. I've never watched it before, so like I might learn things I discovered. I might learn things that I don't agree with. I don't know. It was just some random thing. I just typed in FD Signifier biography and this one showed up. I have no idea who this person is who made it or whatnot. I guess it's by Queer History with Stephanie. Okay. All right, whatever. But so I'm gonna play this and kind of just listen in, and if I hear something interesting, I might pause and kind of comment or something. So yeah.
I think I have a pretty unique story. I'm the youngest of three of a single mom, so I have some of the very stereotypical trappings of African American men growing up, missing father figures, etc. My mom, however, did not struggle. My mother worked incredibly hard. She had her PhD by the time I was graduating from high school. So she put three children through college and got her PhD at the same time. So I have this unique perspective of having a lot of the markers of stereotypical Black poverty, whatever, like seasonings and sprinkles of it, while also being exposed to high levels of achievement and relative privilege because of that. My mother was also a Black Panther in her youth, and I have a lot of like Pan-African, very Afrocentric, like a lot of stuff we call hoteps today that was native to me as a child, which is why I look at it very differently now as an adult, especially compared to what I'm seeing now, which does not look like what I saw as a child. And even in that, because of my privilege, because that was very much a people's class-based movement, but a lot of that people's class-based struggle I didn't feel. And then I also went to a very diverse high school, economically and racially. So I have had the privilege and benefit of having this very unique perspective of the world growing up my entire life, of being able to witness things and touch on different aspects of experiences, which informed my worldview. And while sometimes come into clash with other people, because people can only see the world through the lens that they have access to. And so since my lens tends to include all these other features, I've been accused of being a hotep and accused of being, I can't think of the opposite, but I've been accused of two different like disparate things since I started my channel. I had somebody be overly critical of me because I was too pro-Black. And then I've had people say you hate Black men at the same time. So my experiences made me feel very apart from people. And it wasn't like the like very classic, I didn't fit in with the Black people stuff. Like I had no problem fitting in with Black people. And, you know, I had a strong love for my folks, but I was either around bougie Black folks or Black folks from the struggle. And I won't say I was halfway in both worlds. I was 30% in the struggle, 70% in bougie. But like most people in bougie were 100% in bougie and had like no love for the struggle and vice versa. And so that was my experience, I should say. So when I got to college and I got to meet so many other Black folks who had similar experiences, and then I got to have folks from the struggle, because, you know, HBCUs will take Black folks from, you know, lower economic status backgrounds and build them into the best, most dynamic people in the game. So getting to like have that build me up into a different person was so valuable. I met my wife there, and just so many different growth experiences came out of that.
And this is a space that I've been challenged on, but I'm kind of still going to stand on it. I think we underestimate coming out of the academy. I don't know if the lore of my background has been put out there, but I was I'm ABD in my PhD program, and I'm not going to finish it just because I don't care enough. I'm getting enough money from YouTube.
Yeah, we did an episode on the education, the state
industrial
of education.
complex.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
But one thing I realized that took a little bit of my wind out of my sails in academia was, as I started getting into gender, there's just not enough about masculinity in, you know, academic gender discourses. And that's, I think, just to be honest, because there aren't enough men or males like doing it. Because, you know, under no circumstances should there be a body of literature about a population where very few people of that population are contributing to the body. And so what I think exists here, this is why I'm such a big fan of Bell Hooks, because she was one of the few scholars that I thought got some of the reality of what it means to what the burden of patriarchy is. And how do you, like, I can't say patriarchy is a burden effectively to some people, because it's like what do you mean? Like, it's a threat to me. And it's like, yeah, well, that's true. And it's not a threat to me in the same way, but I wish it was more understood how that works.
And that's how these manosphere people kind of get a leg up, is because they engage with that hurt, that space of hurt, in a way that a lot of others don't even know how to. I started out thinking I was going to be the next Puff Daddy for some reason.
Like a rapper?
No, like a music producer. I actually have a really funny story about meeting Akon's mom, hearing Akon's music and thinking it was bad, and then like completely dropping a significant opportunity to be on Akon's team. And so like after that happened, I realized I didn't have the chops for that. So I got into the family business, which has been community service, community activism, teaching, whatever. So I became a teacher. And as a byproduct of that, of wanting to stay engaged with youth, I've always been, more than people my age, paying attention to YouTube and whatever social media was at the time. The YouTube video essay, left tube, commentary space is a very woman-dominated space and a white male-dominated space. And I appreciate the many contributions I've gotten from those videos, but I've always felt, and I'm a consumer of like that stuff for years, since it really started being a thing in the early 2010s. And so I was always kind of like, man, I really wish somebody was talking about these things that are of interest to me, but in a way that I rock with. And so I was like, let me be that person, basically. And people seem to respond to it because I guess I wasn't the only one missing that type of voice. I am a pop culture and media junkie. Yeah, so like that's really where it starts, is that's just the stuff I would do if I had just no reason to make a video about it. I would want to watch as much as I can, and then I wanted to talk to people about what I watched. And then that also kind of is what got me to like being critical of things more, because you see enough and you start to recognize patterns. Like I didn't go to school for film per se, but like you see enough movies, you start to recognize patterns. Like I'm a person where like, don't ask me like what's going to happen next, because I'm going to tell you and I'm going to probably be right. You know what I'm saying? Because I like, not even just like, my wife still doesn't understand how I do it, you know, but once you understand stories and narrative, then you know what a creator is trying to do. So yeah, so like really it's just, I'm just a pop culture junkie. I was a teacher for 10 years.
What did you teach?
I taught English. So I'm also like a junkie of stories and like, you know, elements to storytelling. And so part of the enjoying media was also just keeping up with the kids and not wanting to be completely out of touch with what they're consuming. Because, you know, I've always believed that pop culture is just as valuable and depthful as Shakespeare and Chaucer and shit. So I am a former edgelord. Like I'm a former edgy guy. I want to say things, and I, you know, I'm super important, and the Joker and Fight Club. Like I was into a lot of that coming out of high school, you know, undergrad, and it colored the way I saw the world. And then as I grew and got older, I was like, ooh, I don't know about a lot of this stuff I've been thinking and doing for the last however long. And then like when I made that video, it was reflecting partially on my experiences and how I fell into this space where this media gave color to a place I was in. And then it kind of reinforced it. It reflected it. I always be careful. It didn't cause it. That was where I was because of, you know, my insecurities and things I was going through in life. But the media gave me something to chew on that had the same energy.
Can you explain the edgelord concept?
Edgelord is basically usually almost always a guy, almost always, you know, in the young adulthood. So we're talking about, you know, middle school to hopefully it's over by your early 20s. Some people it never ends. And you feel the key thing is that your social society, as it's been taught to you, which is still a legitimate thing, has not proven itself to be what's been taught to you. You're usually on the outskirts of social, you know, of social circles because you don't fit in. You know, you don't have good social skills. You're into niche things, whatever. And so you begin trying to understand that. You look for reasons to make sense of that experience. It's not a fun one. And then you start to, a lot of people, once they get there, they start to want to push the boundaries. And then they want to get reactions out of people. And then they want to, you know, claim power from that space. and then they just start getting really edgy. So they just want to be shocking, and they want to, they know how society really is. And there's a lot of really negative behavior that comes out of it. It's very connected to like red pill, incel activity, because fundamentally, these are a lot of unhappy young men who are looking for reasons to explain their unhappiness. And the problem is the edginess doesn't explain it. What explains it is, oppressive systems, oppressive gender performance rules for a lot of boys, capitalism, getting into all the cold words. And so you bring up Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and that's one of the biggest things I want to get into is how the left has been thoroughly, like America's leftist past was thoroughly eradicated during the Cold.
Yes, during McCarthy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the McCarthy era. And like, I didn't really get, like, I'm just now fully understanding that. And that has numerous effects, right? One of it's just the fact that it's allowed us to slide further into, I call it diet fascism. And I don't know how long this is going to be on a diet in this country, the way we're going. Mm-hmm. But it's also made recovering the left and any type of leftist ethos in our politics and our social interactions so difficult, because I'm of a generation, I'm 40, so I was a child at the end of the Cold War. And I remember fallout drills. I remember hiding under desks because the Russians, I had plenty of anti-communist propaganda in my media. And I didn't know that Martin Luther King was hated because he was a socialist. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know that Malcolm X came back talking about socialism from Mecca before he was murdered. These are things that are completely unknown. And I had a uniquely pro-Black, radical Black politics upbringing. Like, as it's very, very, there's not too many people that had an upbringing like mine. Now, there's people that were more intensely brought up under that, ethos. But like, my mother, was involved with, Black Panther affiliate. I'll say she's Black Panther affiliated because she was too young to really be in the streets like that. A lot of my family were involved in radical Black politics in Chicago. And I had no idea until relatively recently that the Black Panthers were a socialist organization. And I don't think I'm alone in that. And this is why men need to come to the front, because I know how it feels to be told not to cry as a little boy. That's a scarring. And like, I heard Liam take a breath there.
Yeah. No, well, it's
You know how it feels. Like that was a trigger. You just got triggered there. Not in like the pejorative sense, but like, I know how that feels. I'm getting goosebumps now having flashbacks to like what it feels like to be deeply hurt or deeply in pain and being told that my natural human response is not okay because of my gender. Right. And it's like, if you don't understand that innately and you can't empathize with what that feels like, it becomes difficult to respond to it in the way that is necessary. Just like you all can't understand necessarily how it feels to be a Black man in America, or I don't know what it feels like to be a woman or a trans woman, or on a whole spectrum of identity. And so like, I really just want other, men, whether it be trans or cis, to engage in the recovery process of some of these men and boys, because it's gonna require the perspectives that we understand to make it efficient. And so, so coming back, I guess, full circle, that media Fight Club, when I saw it, it changed my life at 17, right? I was like, it all makes sense now. We live in a society, all that good stuff. And you couldn't tell me nothing about it for darn near 10 years, probably. And then I started to learn, and I was like, well, not 10 years. Let me give myself more credit. But then I watched a YouTube video, a video essay about it by a gay man who pointed out that this is a gay allegory, and that the original writer was a gay man who, at the time, I guess, I don't know if he was in the closet technically, but it was just all these things that I missed because I was focused on how it attached to who I was at the time. And so I've just always been interested in how that works and how people see certain things because of their standpoint or don't see certain things because of their standpoint. I say all that to bring up another point that is concerning about, I guess, the modern younger left is that the left has become also an identity to a lot of young people, almost like counterculture, which it makes sense because the left, you had a lot of, anarchist punk rock bands. You had that with involved within the political spectrum. You had a lot of art and culture involved with it. And so that's great because it creates maybe a hook for a lot of young people. But I think because the left is now dominated by the bourgeoisie whites who are under the age of 30, that creates limitations in its ability to get back to being relevant on the national stage or the world stage.
Your own words or your own opinion, like, what do you think it means to actually be critical of our stories?
It really just, to me, it means to think about them in the ways that they grow and affect us, or what they're trying to give us as pieces of art. Even if it's just give us something to laugh at, even if it's, lowbrow, stuff. A piece of media will become a piece of who you are if it connects with you like that. My curiosity is, what is it? What is connecting with you from this piece of media? People are going through this with Harry Potter, right? Because of J.K. Rowling's anti-trans stuff. So it's like, is their behavior so bad that by consuming their art and essentially giving them money, are you contributing to the harm of others? So for me, if the answer to that is yes, then you kind of got to let it go. Then it's like, okay, their behavior's bad, but it's like bad, like I was bad at one point in time. Bad like we all are bad at points in times. Bad as in contributing harmful ideas, being a shitty person. Like it becomes a wavelength. And in that space, I say, what do you feel like you should do? I feel like it's not smart or, I don't want to say logical. I feel like it's just not practical to create hardline rules about what art can be separated from said artists, like this is the rule for everybody. I feel like if you are no longer comfortable with that artist and that person's art, then do not listen to it. If people play it around you and you're like, this makes me uncomfortable, and they don't stop, leave that space. Maybe don't hang with that person anymore. If they get mad about it, stand your ground. You know what I'm saying? And I wouldn't get mad about it if that was my situation. Kanye is a huge part of who I like. I grew up with Kanye, not grew up with him, right? But like Kanye was the first black man to be emotional out loud in public. You know what I'm saying? So for a lot of men like myself, like canceling Kanye and saying I'm never consuming his work, I'm never paying attention to him, I'm never engaging in that. I don't see that as a thing. Now, am I going to excuse his behavior? Hell no, not me personally. Do I even like his last couple of albums? Nope. You know what I'm saying? But I can't reject, what I haven't gotten to a point with Kanye's behavior personally where I can reject what his music meant to me when I was 19, 20 years old and trying to understand myself as an emotional being, as a black man, right? And so once I get to that point, I'll stop listening to Kanye, Once it becomes hard, if something else comes out about Kanye and he's in a whole other level of harm, then yeah, I'll probably get to that point. But I'm not going to personally force people to be where I'm at.
Yeah.
Nor am I going to force people to, you know what I'm saying? Like I feel like that's the best thing. The one thing I'll say about that, and I don't believe in like the whole cancel culture, like I don't believe in that. But I do think there's an element to people who have been voiceless having access to a powerful voice that's very new. And initially I was like, I'm gonna still enjoy the music because like that's part of my childhood. And then over time, because of this rule, I can't hear it anymore. I don't listen to it. Like when I hear it, I can't stop thinking of the reality of what that person is responsible for. But the truth of the matter is, you got to live your life. You got to do better. My axiom is life is short. We have one life right now, as far as we know. Enjoy it as much as you can, while doing as little harm as you can and trying to leave it as better than when you got here. That's my general rule for life, because everything else is real, starts getting real complicated. And so you shouldn't be making broad rules for very complex situations. It really ain't. I don't need you to. I was saying this to somebody. I don't need you to introduce yourself in every comment. I need you to cut a check, share a video, join the Patreon. Don't even got to be mine. So don't feel bad, random white ally. Cut the check, show the support, show the love, and you'll feel better. We see you. This is my first piece of media since as a YouTuber, so this is dope. This is a space where I'm uniquely qualified. And so thus, I really need to step up and engage.
So, interesting stuff. Like I said, a very thoughtful person or whatnot, comes from his own background or what, everything like that, though, too. But then it's almost like but you kind of hear those last kind of comments. I'm uniquely qualified. Are you? Because what does that even really mean? You're uniquely qualified based on your own experiences, I guess. But like a lot of times, that's what I'm saying. A lot of black people don't even understand other black people's experiences, because they're kind of invalidating their blackness because they don't come from the same environment that they do and everything. And I'm going to get a little bit more into that by sharing a video with him and Little Bill, kind of just, chalking it up and everything. But it's like, I come from a unique experience to white people and to maybe certain sub segments of the black community that we just think is the entirety of the black community or something. But do you understand the entire objective truth of blackness? I don't think anybody understands that. And I don't think anybody should understand it or whatnot and claim to have it or whatnot. So let me see here. So, actually, 1 minute. Okay, so there's that, right? So it's kind of like, sorry, I just took a pause real quick. So it's like, I'm uniquely qualified to speak on these things or whatnot. And that's what I'm saying. You kind of start playing with the idea that like I can just somehow speak on all black issues because I understand them from all vantage points, but you don't, because you're from your own unique experience and your own unique environment and background that, like I said, doesn't necessarily even understand some of the black subcultures that you may have an issue with, like the black bourgeoisie or whatnot. Whatever that is, whatever that means. Like, have you really? I don't know. It always seems to be like assumptions. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all kind of running off a level of assumption, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is particularly from a person on the left, right? And put it this way, postmodernism, right? There's a lot of accusations that you hear from the right that, oh, the left is postmodernist or whatnot. Not true. However, there are instances where the left has used postmodernism as a analysis method, right? In other words, using deconstruction, using relativity in a way to kind of question grand truths and assumptions, because grand truths and assumptions can cause damage, basically. Postmodernism in the philosophical historical sense was a reaction to the modernist movement of the early 20th century, 1800s, etc. Right, a response to the industrialization of man, right, and the notion that like science and reason could somehow always solve our problems, when the sad truth is that reason and logic also gave us the justification, subjectively speaking, for certain people in Germany to throw other people who were Jewish into concentration camps. And it also created the logic behind ending wars with nuclear weapons. So the postmodernists came as a reaction to the modernist period after World War II by essentially undermining, challenging grand assumptions and objective truths. So of course conservatives would have a natural problem with this, because people are naturally going to challenge the status quo, right? And this is when you start getting into the French philosophers and everything, Marcuse and Baudrillard and Francois Lyotard of the postmodern condition, and Jacques Derrida, and all these type of people, Simone de Beauvoir, Sartre, Camus, yada yada, right? And Deleuze, and a lot of those guys, right, were not actually, they were actually just really just trying to challenge the status quo, and that pissed a lot of people off, right? And of course, conservatives have an issue with that. But the truth of the matter is that the left has used postmodernism, the right has used postmodernism. You know, let's say the MAGA movement of conservatism right now that we're seeing is just postmodern conservatism, using solipsism and gobbledygook to kind of undermine what they consider to be the current existing objective order of the, liberal order of diversity, of integration, etc., in using postmodernism, meme warfare, solipsism, merging high art and low art to kind of deconstruct us back to a pre-modernist, quasi-medieval, barbaric, Judeo-Christian Bronze Age way of thinking, right? Postmodernism is just a tool and anybody can use it. But for the left who has used it, I'm not saying that they are explicitly entirely postmodernist, which is what a conservative like a Jordan B. Peterson would want you to believe, which he is false about. But since the left has used postmodernism as an analysis method, you know what I'm saying, when it comes to FD signifier, it's kind of like you should be approaching things with a certain level of skeptical nature, but also undermining objective truths. But what I'm saying is he's not necessarily he at a certain level of time he's going to perpetuate his own objective truth of what it means to be a black person in its authentic way or something, and he will cast out things that he considers to be unauthentic. And I'm making the vantage point is he doesn't fully understand the things that he or some of his contemporaries like Lil Bill would cast out because they're not from those environments. They didn't live that lived experience of what it means to be a black kid living in suburbia. And to be honest, it's not all negative. They want to believe that it's a big sob story of identity crisis. And if you're not totally surrounded by Hotep, quasi strong matriarchy, black patriarchs or whatever, matriarchs or whatever, somehow you just can't be black almost. You can't understand it, right? And I totally refute that. Not only from a leftist, not only from an existentialist perspective, not only from a postmodernist perspective, but just from a common sense perspective. Regardless of what ism or ideology you espouse to, you just don't 100% know. And I feel like a lot of people in the cornbread tube, they literally call it cornbread tube for whatever reason. Um, make this assumption that they're trying to perpetuate in a certain aesthetic, roots, the culture, locks, dreads, black, red, green, kente cloth, these sort of things. And sure, they might be talking about more traditionally non-stereotypically black subject matter, but still they still are attached to that underlying foundational aesthetic of what we consider to be stereotypical Pan-Africanist politics. And as a result of that, sometimes I think that they undermine and cancel out and exclude other black lifestyles that just don't have that foundational aesthetic, even though ontologically, mentally, existentially, spiritually, what have you, they are black people whose voices do matter. And to create distinctions like the house and the field and bougie people and people in the streets and all this type of stuff, it's like, sure, you can say that if you want to, but I don't think that either or is the objective truth, and has more sway over the other. I just think that we should incorporate all of their lived lifestyles and whatnot. And from a person like who grew up in suburbia, right? I'm a black person who grew up in suburbia. Honestly, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I loved it. Everything that these guys are like just discovering that they can, whoa, I can finally do. I've been on that. I'm done with it. I'm old. You know what I'm saying? Skateboarding, rock and roll music, anime music. This is like early 90s stuff to me. This isn't anything new. But I don't need to project like I'm keeping it real because I need to maintain my black card by me admitting this. Whereas I feel like some people like JD Signifier, they feel like they have to almost kind of like keep it real a little bit just to make sure, don't get it twisted, that I'm still this aesthetic that I need you to believe I am in order to take what I'm saying seriously. Because he knows, like I said, a lot of black people and a lot of non-black people need that aesthetic that he's accentuating to exist, to not only support a subconscious level of differentiation, but also they're looking for what they consider to be the most authentic black source. And sometimes for good reasons and sometimes for bad reasons. It's almost like take me to your leader. You know what I'm saying? And so when you present yourself as I am the leader or something like that, I'm going to be a little suspicious because I'm just like, well, no, he's not the leader. None of these people are democratically elected to just speak on behalf of black people. Therefore, everything they are saying is their own really opinion based off their lived experiences. And when it comes to this take me to your leader mentality that I feel like non-black people do, Asian, Arab, white, what have you, is not just white supremacy that we like to, always talk about, which is an issue. But to be honest, black people are kind of suffering under anti-blackness globally speaking, from Chinese trolls to Pakistanis and Indians to Turkish people to people all over the place who have accepted negative stereotypes and images of black people across the globe. But the problem with this take me to your leader mentality is, for the white liberal standpoint, is that they're assuming that a person like JD Signifier is the source of information in entirety of it. And that can just be dangerous in and of itself because it can embolden the person who they think is the leader to have more power than what he really deserves. But also, it can actually give white people just almost a different way to kind of be passively racist in a way or something like that. Like for example, it's like they'll want to chill and kick it with a person like FD Signifier, right? But let's just say that you're a person who just doesn't have that aesthetic, but you're black, right? And let's just say that you're a non-black person who has an issue with the black person who doesn't look like FD Signifier. They may actually try to take your blackness. In other words, they're going to try to play the I'm blacker than you card, basically, because of, ironically, people like FD Signifier and his inability to include all the other lived and walked experiences of black people who aren't simply like him and from his environment. So you end up convincing these white people that, or non-white or non-black people that, oh, okay, so that's the standard. You're not the standard. But since I seem to resonate and vibe with what he's telling me or whatever, somehow I must be blacker than you, which is kind of a way of just kind of invalidating that black person's existence. Just another way of doing it. Instead of calling them the N word, you're just almost just saying like you just don't even exist now or whatnot. And so that's the whole issue with the whole take me to your leader. I am the leader. I am the arbiter of truth when it comes to black issues. And I feel like this is something that black people just constantly fall for. We're constantly looking for a leader. We don't need a leader. We need a convention. You know what I'm saying? Where we can have our kumbaya, breaking bread moments where you can be the quote unquote nerdiest black person. We need the nerdiest black people and the most in the streets black people coming together. But that's never going to happen because of this whole gatekeeping of culture, this whole constant quest of jockeying and competitiveness and rapping over who is more authentic than what. And I know this is something that kind of is in the consciousness of FD because, in a weird way, one clue about his personality is he likes professional wrestling and he likes rap music. And so what do these things kind of do? They're about bravado. They're about projecting a sense of competition, right? So in other words, it's about battling, right? So I think that he is a person who kind of likes a little bit of conflict. He likes a little bit of anarchy. Or not anarchy, or he likes a little bit, he just likes conflict a little bit, right? So therefore, I think he feels that, like, you know, if I argue it well enough, then somehow it must just be true or something like that. But from I would say a postmodern existentialist perspective, is you can never truly 100% understand the truth. And I'm not saying that FD doesn't get that. I think it's just a part of his being to almost not understand or reject that other black lifestyles exist from the non-stereotypical trajectory of blackness that we kind of see on a daily basis, right? But it's complicated. But anyways, I want to show you this video here, right? And this is actually by, so first off, this is actually by Lil Bill, right? Who's another kind of kente cloth, Pan-Africanist, leftist, on YouTube, right? And he did this video called The Very Black History of Punk Rock. I'm not going to play it, but it's just very interesting, right? In other words, and when I see this, right, as a black person who grew up listening to like punk, rock, whatever, right, I know a lot about it, right? Eyeball Records, all these type of things, the New Brunswick scene, all this type of stuff, right, is, post-hardcore. A lot of my progressive politics is informed by hardcore, post-hardcore music, more so than rap music, to be honest with you, as a black person. So, like, for example, just the analysis of this thumbnail, right? In other words, you have to kind of show that, like, no, we are punk too, like, we're badass and everything like that. We belong, and we do, right? But the one thing I kind of notice about the video is just admit that you like rock music. Can you just admit that without the kind of like, I need to almost kind of keep it real simultaneously at the same time? Because he's playing with the same thing that I think FD kind of does. It's like he kind of knows that if he were to just have a video of a black person just talking about, I like punk rock, this is what it means to me, this is how it inspires me or whatnot, he fears probably that he's going to lose credibility amongst black watchers. So he has to kind of do the kind of shame whitey, kind of keep it real type politics or whatever to kind of retain this hopscotch kind of thing that black people feel they need to do of keeping it real. It's like the Dave Chappelle skit of keeping it real, right? He feels like that's what they need to do. So it's a very interesting video, and I remember watching it like over a year ago, and I was just like, can you just admit you just like punk music? You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to do all the extra stuff. I mean, you can do the extra stuff if you want to, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like he knows that there's going to be backlash from some people who might try to take his black authenticity by him admitting that he likes this type of music. So therefore, he has to compensate by inserting all the quasi hotepish type talking points, the long stares, the kind of drab, dead tone talk and everything like that, and just admit that maybe you're just kind of a dude who likes to listen to some punk rock or something. I mean, and that's totally fine, like, and that's cool. Like, like the whole keeping it real thing. Sometimes I notice is what kind of throws me off about what I consider to be some. I even hate saying this term, cornbread tube content creators. You know what I'm saying? Like even when we just couldn't be a part of BreadTube. You know what I'm saying? We had to make it cornbread tube or whatever. I like cornbread. Cornbread's good. You know what I'm saying? Some of it's sweet, some of it's a little salty or whatnot. But I like some cornbread. But the constant need for differentiation, right? By almost engaging in, ironically, some of the most stereotypical perceptions of black people. But this is one I want to play here for you.
So how would you purify water in case of a blackout? Oh, I'd boil it. Boiling kills bacteria, but it doesn't remove contaminants. Plus, it takes a long time. In an emergency, we need a method that's
Is it fair to say you can tell the type of nigga that don't date black women?
Yo, I heard a great take on that. I heard a great take from a black woman.
The hairline is the indicator.
Yes,
I can see that.
Yes,
I can see that.
It was like, yo, a black woman would not let him step out of the house with
That's
that
true.
goddamn with that hairline.
Yeah, with that 1965,
Basically. Civil rights.
Yeah, that NAACP hairline is a.
It's a red flag.
Yeah, somebody just taught me the term bisexual lighting. apparently we need to add that.
Oh man, y'all got to get so Josh is halfway there. You got to get it more.
He got the heterosexual lighting right now.
This is now. Josh got that Purple Rain Prince joint. Now, Josh, you got to be.
See?
You got to get you got to mix something in there.
But see, what comes out of my mouth like contradicts, and I my heart is good. I mean well, but the shit that become, like it's just like they're like, this motherfucker, like I'm the worst one, when it comes to that type of shit.
It's all good.
They said I was a eugenicist. You got it.
Oh Lord, he said you was a eugenicist.
Oh, wait, let me not break.
Oh, yo.
Well, whatever it is, it's old news. We know what we know your heart.
I didn't.
My name is Bennett, and I ain't in it.
Yeah, y'all bringing up old stuff, man.
That's the thing, man. When you interpolate with the community, so one thing it's a gift and a curse. The community that we're connected to, a lot of the people that you've had on who are part of my crew, we have we're high standards in terms of like how spicy these takes get. And the thing that I'm trying to like get into, if you go watch that video, is I'm trying to like turn the temperature down on that a little bit, because when people are used to being like mistreated in almost every aspect of their life,
they're ready. Mm-hmm. They're ready.
They're ready. And I think what people have to start doing more of is recognizing people's intentions, their blind spots, and like their will to do better. And so it's like I had this whole video that the last one where people were calling me a Nazi. I talked about accountability.
What did you do? I seen that on Twitter. I was like, nigga, what did you do?
What does this
You were the chosen one. What did you say?
Oh my God.
Right.
You are the
I'm a Nazi
for you, FD.
That's the thing. Is right. It's so disappointing. But the short version is people, need to kind of like be okay with accountability being about something people are pursuing. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And like making change and like pursuing change and growth. It's being a process. Listening and being open-minded versus like, here was your bad moment, your bad take. It's a wrap for you. Now,
I'm about to kill you.
Right. It's a wrap for you. And we're going to hold that over you all the time. Like literally, there are people. So I've developed my anti-fan base. And there are people that every time I pop up, they're going to come and say the same 3 or 4 things that they don't like about me that make little to no sense. But they're going to come through. That's what they do. And they're trying to like spread their doctrine because that's their thing. And so now one of them is I'm a Nazi.
FDZ.
FDZ.
I love Hitler.
FDZ now. FDZ. That's my nigga.
Oh, Lord.
No, but I think that's just like a sign of success. That unfortunately, that is one of these signs of success and the human condition. Because no matter what you do, whether it be the most positive thing on earth, you're always going to have haters. You're always going to have people talking shit about you, misinterpreting your words to fit their own agenda. So it's just like
Mr. Rogers don't have no haters though. I feel like
I'm sure he would if he was on Twitter.
If he was a Twitch streamer, he'd still have it.
Yo, he have absolutely. Mr. Rogers don't have haters because he wasn't alive.
He was in the military. There you go. See, Mr. Rogers was in the military. He's a fascist.
Oh, true. That's
how it is.
Man, he was in the military? Now I kind of don't like him as much no more. Okay, we've spread. Last time you were on, you got us in trouble too, because I said that Trevor Noah was married to a white woman, and you didn't correct me, and these motherfuckers lit me up. You should have. You should have known better, FD, and you should have told me, because these motherfuckers lit my ass up, because not only is he not married, there is no white woman, and they did not appreciate me putting lies on that man's name.
Oh, there's white women, but he's not married to
right.
Okay.
It's only a matter of time.
My brother Trevor, no, he out there, right?
That's just like I know he was on the docket. Just like I know he's on the docket. I don't know if we want to jump into him already.
We gonna get into it when we get it. We gonna get into it when we get to the actual part. But no. But we can. You can say
Oh, just like is it fair to say you can tell the type of nigga that don't date black women?
I wouldn't have called him for that though. But not that.
You talking about Majors? Or no?
Oh, wait, who are you talking about?
I'm talking about Jonathan Majors.
That's what I was talking about.
Yeah, I would have called. You wouldn't have called that?
I wouldn't have
He
called
just
it.
has that. He has that civil rights old school. Like he doesn't get his hair. Like I don't know. He didn't have. I wouldn't have. Yeah.
Yo, I heard a great take on that. I heard a great take from a black woman.
The hairline is the indicator. I can see that. I can see that.
It was like, yo, a black woman would not let him step out the house with
That's
that
true.
goddamn with that hairline.
Yeah, with that 1965. Yeah.
And I think that's why we say he looks like.
Yeah, he wouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like he could have been in Emancipation. Yeah.
Yeah, that NAACP hairline is but he wore it differently because I think what we're talking about because they said the same thing with sisters. They said that you can tell which one of them dates white men, which one dates black men.
You talking about T and Tamara?
Black men. T and Tamara, yeah.
Okay.
Sister, yeah. You know.
Okay.
And they said that you can, in the same way, you can divine which one of them dates black men and which one doesn't. I agree that like a more scraggly or like a dude that's got like straightened hair, those could be indicators. But Jonathan Major's hairline gave more like rustic black man vibe.
It gave more like Anthony Hamilton.
Exactly.
Childish Gambino.
But Childish Gambino is
Childish Gambino only dates white women.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
That hair, like, yo, if you've ever seen an unkept hairline, like, yo, that's
it's Gambino. But Gambino don't have the hairline to even fuck with. That's
the best. That's his best. Yeah,
that's his best. That's his best bet. Because his shit is like if he tried to shake that up, he'd look like Jamie Foxx. Going natural, it works for his hairline. But doing the best I can. Does Chiwetel Ejiofor have a white woman? Let's look this up because you might. There might be some science to this.
I love making up games on the spot. I wish we had a chat.
Name that hairline.
Here go the game. Does this nigga date black women?
Yo.
Okay, let's
gotta put the emoji in there. this ninja date black women.
This is what Ivy League universities you can get into with a 3.6 GPA.
90% of students with a 4.0 plus GPAs get rejected from universities like Harvard, Stanford, and other top 10 universities. Your child needs these three key factors to get into.
No, who's the person that you're talking about?
So right now we're on Chiwetel
Ejiofor. He's what's he from?
He's been a lot of
the Earth, World War Z.
12 Years a Slave.
12 Years a Slave. Yeah, he's 12 Years a Slave.
That's probably his most well-known joint.
12 Years a Slave.
All right, so I'm looking.
It's a white woman.
It's a white woman. All right, so
but it's a black woman in here too. Hold on. Let me see. This might be his child actually. Let me see. Hold on.
No, I'm seeing all white women.
That's a wife. That's a wife. Yeah, no,
he might have had a black woman earlier.
No, but this is. I think this is his child standing next to him actually.
So I am super positive that we will be getting Medicare for all here soon after hearing that conversation. But anyways, it was just interesting, right? It's just kind of like what? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's kind of funny in a certain extent though too, but it's also kind of like shame language in a sense. It's kind of like they're trying to elicit a certain behavior. So what you have to do, particularly in the black community, is clown on it, right? So you have to clown on it. You have to make it seem that even if you aren't that, somehow you're a part of this kind of lame group of people is what they're trying to do. And sometimes when I see FD Signifier, I just see a black woman, to be honest, a little bit. But it's just, which is nothing wrong with that. I mean, nothing wrong with, being a black woman or anything. But when I see him, it's almost kind of like, I can tell, like he was basically just raised kind of by a single waiting to exhale black woman, to a certain extent, who was, grinded, did what she needed to do or whatnot. But a lot of his worldview is coming from a matriarchal viewpoint. And to be honest, like how white men in white, let's just say European culture, which is a patriarchal culture, I would argue that black culture in the United States, not in Africa overall, like some people want to make it seem, is actually a matriarchy because of the conditions of how black people and the families were separated and things of that nature, that women typically call more of the shots about the trajectory of the household, the community, etc. So it's more of a matriarchy to a certain extent, and which has caused, I think, issues and problems, particularly for men who are trying to find their identity or whatnot. and don't really know how to find that identity 100%, because when you're trying to become a man or whatever, first off, what does that even mean? But then sometimes men might take on some toxic characteristics of patriarchy that we've learned and accepted from, let's just be real, the European superstructure that, landed on top of us. Um, but it's just interesting. It's like, it just seems like a very childish thing, 100%, like what these guys are talking about. And it's just like, you're telling me you can't find an NBA player with some dreads or whatever like that who's married to a white woman or a Latina or an Asian lady or something. You're purposely going out of your way to find things to kind of like justify this claim or stance. And what you're really arguing for is profiling people. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't want to be profiled, but we should profile others to a certain extent. It just seems like there's a lot of like, it makes you think too that, like, in a weird way, let's just say that, a minority group versus a majority, right? And let's just say there's this whole notion that the minority group is supposed to be noble, and they're oppressed and they're aggrieved. But you start hearing some of the things that we're saying within our own ranks and everything, and it's like, if we had the power and things were different, we would be no different. So I'm not saying that that's a justification for us to be treated the way be kept in our space as minorities or whatnot. But I can understand how maybe a person might be a little nervous to see, people be elevated from their current circumstance or whatnot, because they fear retribution and they fear a type of discrimination from the people who may rise up against them. And then that creates a situation where, like I said, because of identity politics and these things, the working class isn't really uniting, and we're not focusing on substantial issues or matters or whatever. Like, when I see these guys talking, I'm thinking to myself, like, just get out the nail polish in the fingernail files and start doing each other's nails. Like, what is even going on here? You know what I'm saying? The only people who are like effing with this are probably just like maybe some black women who just, I guess, are terrified about the white woman or something. It's almost like a comedy movie. It's a comedy movie where it's just like a bunch of black people are like in a movie theater, and it's a horror movie, and it's like, coming next fall, white women or whatever, and like the lady on screen who's a black lady is just like crying hysterically at the sight of just like an innocuous white woman just standing there. It's like, what are we even doing anymore? You know what I'm saying? And the irony is that white women are women, so therefore they are kind of oppressed in their own way. They have privileges or whatnot, if you want to get intersectional about it, but they are still kind of the property of white patriarchy. They are equally as objectified, shamed. Many of them have been murdered by it and everything like that. So instead of making it, see, the thing about interracial relationships is that many black people, or some black people and some white people, people who don't understand it and don't agree with it, they want to reduce it to a fetish. They want to reduce interracial relations to something of, they want to make it seem like it's about brainwashing, right? You've been brainwashed to like black men. You've been brainwashed to like white women. Not actually thinking in a weird way, because of the power differentials in our own intra-racial dynamics, where I say black culture is typically a matriarchy and white culture is typically a patriarchy, that in a weird way, as controversial as it may sound, maybe black men and white women, when dealing with their sexual counterparts within their own communities, have a lot more of the same grievances in common. Therefore, they create like a natural attraction to each other. In other words, they feel like they can kind of be themselves a little bit more, as wild as that might sound, right? I feel like something like that would melt FD Signifier's brain, and he would try to find every single thing wrong with that argument, even though there is a chance that what I am saying is true. So it's just very interesting. Like, it's just like, this whole notion of like hating on white women and everything like that. And don't get me wrong, there are plenty of Karens and crazy ones, and many white women have gotten black men killed, unfortunately. But then at the same time, a lot have not. You know what I'm saying? If anything, they're kind of like, white women are kind of like women in towers being protected by a dragon, effectively, and nobody else are allowed to touch them besides their own men. They're basically just commodities of just white patriarchy, intended to just help maintain white majorities by producing as many white babies as possible. in this kind of racially obsessed world that we live in, unfortunately, right? And black men are seen as the true threat, a threat of violence and a threat of a stereotypical fetishized black sexual virility, right? The mandingo, the bull, all these type of things, right? A lot of and there's a lot of negatives in there can be negatives in interracial relationships because there can't even be that type of that fetishization can't exist, right? Where you have just people just wanting to be with a person because maybe they're better in bed, or or maybe they have been influenced by white Western beauty standards. But you also have to think about the possibility in the reality that maybe just people just like each other and they vibe with each other, and it's just that simple. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's sometimes it's like what these three black men that we're seeing here are doing are no different than what like white supremacists might do behind closed doors when they're trying to shame a white woman from ever dating anybody who's not white. And this is totally acceptable that is coming from them, I guess, right? And like this and put it this way, right? They made this video and Trump still won. And granted, they don't have the power to affect change in a way how they don't have the power to just make things happen as presidential elections or something like that. But what I'm saying is maybe we're just wasting time on this BS, right? Like, we literally live in a world and a society now where it's totally acceptable to believe in gender fluidity. But the moment that you talk about racial fluidity, it seems to have an issue or a problem. And I would probably make the argument that, no offense, that race is more of an ontological or is more of a construct than gender is. As controversial, dun dun dun, as that sounds. So it's totally okay for us to live in a world where gender and sex is a spectrum, but it's totally not acceptable for us to live in a world where race is not a spectrum. You know what I'm saying? Like, what? Like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's just something that we now treat on the left as fact when we should challenge even that fact of operation or something like that. It's like what made that okay and what made these other things okay? And that's a valid question to ask. It just seems it's just very interesting. Like, yeah, like is yeah, everybody's all about LGBTQ stuff, which is fine. I support that and everything like that. Do you, be you, or whatever. But the moment that it seems that you overstep or you start breaking away from racial constructs or whatever, which are constructs, then all of a sudden you not only pose an issue to the far right, you start posing an issue to the far left now. And this is totally acceptable. You know what I'm saying? Like, it almost makes me like I'm sympathetic to the left. I consider myself on the left, and I do a lot more time defending the left than probably what I should. But stuff like this is just frustrating. It's just frustrating, I guess. Like, I don't know, man. I feel like, to me, to be a leftist is to be an individual, to be yourself, and to be inclusive of other people, regardless of their lifestyle, right? And to not constantly try to pigeonhole people into aesthetics. But what I'm hearing from these three fellas is like they basically just want to stereotype people. Like, this is the best analysis we can do. Maybe we don't need any more sociologists. Maybe we need engineers now. You know what I'm saying? Like, the left or whatever, the left loses everything. We haven't got Medicare for all. We haven't got universal education. We haven't got any of these things. But a lot of people have been making money giving us opinions on YouTube. All the police protests, this or that, still lost. Lose everything. The left has no real politic. It has no foreign policy. It has no military policy. When you really start thinking about what it would take to actually build and sustain a society, it doesn't have. It just has perpetual critical theory analysis. Nauseating. But then again, he can just simply wash his hands and says, I don't have the answers. And guess what? Because of that, I don't subscribe to you. You know what I'm saying? Wish you all the best or whatever, but I'm not going to give you a couple pennies from the algorithm or whatever based off of what I've heard, even though I wish him all the best in the world, right? Let him be. I hope. Put it this way: I already guarantee that Bill Maher is scoping him out to be the voice of black people to replace Charlemagne the God, right? Because this is. He'll be invited to the Harvard little galas or whatever. Him and his wife, or whatever, and there'll be the black people there or whatnot, and they'll basically just treat him like Jean Michel Basquiat. I don't know, man. This is almost leading into a larger conversation about the issues with the left in general. And I want the left to succeed, but like sometimes I feel like it does need some militaristic, hand in your face, tough love in criticism. Because now we're in a situation where from basically the early inception of Black Lives Matters and let's just say when it really was popping and everything, let's just be real, 2014 when it was really on TV, and let's just talk about to now in 2025, we're probably in a worse situation than we've ever been. So I'm just going to leave it at that and kind of just wrap this video up here. And who knows, I might make another video about FD Signifier. And like I said, I'm just flowing just from my thoughts, and that's it. Nothing scripted. Nothing scripted. So appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Take care and peace.